lovely ladies and lovely gentlemen, I am Vitold, and this amazing mood is a result of Honda doing something right. The new XL750 Transalp, as Honda tells us to call it, is maybe not the most exciting motorcycle in the segment, but some things here are certainly not only top-notch, but just the best in the middleweight adventure segment. This is the last bike that I've been riding and familiarizing myself with in the conventional mid-size adventure segment, so excluding Ducati Desert X, Yamaha Tenere 700, Husqvarna Norden 901 and Aprilia Touareg, which are more of I don't want to say hardcore, but more off-road oriented or off-road styled motorcycles, more than traditional on-road tourists, which this Transalp belongs to, in my opinion. So knowing what all other motorcycles in the segment are like, I believe that I now can form some big statements in the end. And I feel that Honda finally wins big time with this Transalp, and I'll explain it in detail and with no sweetening, despite the intro, as this is what this channel is all about. By the way, you may want to subscribe, as I'm going to evaluate those more off-road oriented motorcycles too, while there are also direct head-to-head comparisons of bikes from within this and also big adventures segment coming, so stay with me. Now, the new Transalp has been hugely awaited, at least by me. For the first time, it looks very serious and presents itself as a capable bike with proper power and performance, since we've got a 755 cubic centimeter two-cylinder inline engine with 91 horsepower and 75 newton-meters of torque. This is 50% more power than the last Transalp before that 10-year gap in presence of this model. It's a sick story. Why would Honda skip an entire line for 10 years while the segment seems to be doing rather okay? Now very well, probably. But now they've taken parts from some other motorcycles that they've got, they've designed some new parts, and the new 2023 XL750 Transalp has been presented. Smart move, in fact, isn't it? Yeah, especially considering the result, which finally made me relieved. I really wanted to enjoy some Honda from the moment the new Africa Twin 1000 was launched, and it looked pretty cool. And now is the time, because this Transalp introduces some points which are simply, I think, flawless. But let's start from the beginning and the specifics. In real life, at the first glance, it appears to be of a somewhat similar size to the current Africa Twin 1100, but not until you come close, as then you quickly will notice that it is less bulky, it's a bit shorter and sort of leaner, in a good way. And note that the windscreen that you're seeing on the bike that I was riding is a paid accessory from Honda. Transalp normally comes with a shorter one. The bike appears generally approachable and inviting, so then you use that invitation and jump on the horse. And well, it stays just as calm. It doesn't try to throw you off of its backs, since the seat is pretty plush and nice. And along with the rear suspension, it sags. It sags visibly, but that's okay at this stage since the seat is at 85 centimeters, so not the shortest, while there is no adjustment. You can buy a 2-centimeter lower seat, or you could buy one of those electric office chairs like mine. Check out the link to power seats, it's in the description. You may see how they work, 18-way electric adjustment. Now in Transalp, for me, the standard seat is totally fine with my 183 centimeters tall or 6 feet tall. I could flat-foot it with both feet, no trouble, very easily. However, it requires to spread your legs a bit too much for my liking, because the lower area of the seat sticks. There is a shape that somehow sticks to the sides. The trouble I have there is that looking for the closest spot on the ground to put my feet on, it would be exactly where the foot pegs are. So obviously I've got to move my legs either further or forward or backward, and they're unusually far forward here, the foot pegs. I haven't experienced that on any big or mid-sized adventure bike so far, but it's just an observation of something different here. I immediately got used to it, by the way. One more thing that you will have to get used to on a Transalp is Honda's very own placement of a horn button and indicator switch, which are not in their regular locations, but they are flipped. So the horn is where other manufacturers install an indicator switch and vice versa. I'm not a big fan of the idea of doing something differently in this area, but if you only ride your bike, you of course don't care. I had to remember about it, and I haven't made a mistake even once. So ride it with a fresh mind in the beginning, and you should avoid the anger of random drivers that you otherwise would honk at. After some time you just get used to it, it's normal for you. Then others are those aliens. So you're sitting on a nice seat that stays nice and soft even after a long time. Good job, Honda. Just after that longer time of sagging into it, you may feel, well, a bit squeezed by it. A little bit. So when on a bike you realize that this accessory windscreen is so tall that you're looking through it on the tarmac. I only would notice it for 10 seconds and later it would become normal to me. But the real reason I'm mentioning it is that this is the absolutely best wind protection solution in this category and also big adventure bikes so far. No other competitors like Ducati Multistrada V2, Suzuki V-Strom 800D, Triumph Tiger 900, BMW F850 GS or even KTM 890 Adventure, which has a pretty good windshield, none of them is as brilliant as this Transalp with this accessory windshield. This is, ladies and gentlemen, how you do proper upselling. So if you're considering this bike, I can definitely recommend this accessory from Honda. It's tried, and regardless how much it costs at your dealership, it's probably worth it. You will need it, especially that there is no adjustment system, which generally is a shame, but here this windscreen makes up for it. I'm fine with it. Of course, adjustment would be appreciated, and well, anyway, screw you Honda for such weird savings. Now, up to 120 to 130 kilometers per hour, it works great and pretty much fully covers you from wind. It does not generate any turbulences either, so I'm very happy with it. All right, but what happens before you actually get to those speeds? So when setting off, and wow, Transalp feels very light and manageable. It weighs, according to Honda, 208 kilograms with fuel. There is a rather small 16.9 liter fuel tank, but the bike feels light right from the start and it would make me happy and excited. I love that. Dealing with something that you feel that you've got full or at least lots of control of is great. And it truly remains light also when pushing around, despite being still, pretty tall. It's very nice. Based on that, you may expect two things. Great performance, especially considering a lot of power here, and awesome handling. If you assume that, those both things, you'll be around half right. Yet still, the feeling is very nice, and if only you would not have to accept any compromises and sacrifices, it would be a perfect deal, right? All right, so let's see about that. The engine has fairly lot of power on paper. I kept it in the sport mode as there it feels lively and eager to accelerate with no delays. It does well most of the time, but somehow it's not the sort of performance that would work like an adrenaline shot, not to me at least. Up to around 80 kilometers per hour it accelerates quickly and with not much effort. Traction control in this mode works flawlessly too, which is great, and that matters. I once switched to the standard mode, as in sport there is a visible reaction to opening the throttle after having it fully closed. And that moment of engagement can be unpleasant, especially in tight turns or at the roundabouts, which I don't like obviously. So I tried standard, and maybe it was smoother, but the first hard acceleration from a standstill resulted in traction control completely losing its mind and not delivering power almost as you'd be riding on ice. So I quickly switched back as it cannot handle itself there in that mode. Weird, but thankfully the sport mode is the solution. Also at higher speeds it just feels more sloppy and sleepy in standard, even when fully opening, and that's interesting, even when fully opening the throttle, which is a surprise to me, as I believe it should not be limiting total power, but it feels like it does. There is also a rain mode, a gravel mode, and a user mode that you may customize. In sport, it still isn't super crazy exciting, and one downside of the powertrain is that at higher speeds, like above 80 to 100 kilometers per hour, it loses its fire significantly. It does accelerate, but you need to keep it at high RPM, so you need to work your way up first, changing gears rather late, as otherwise it's not too quick there. I was actually expecting more, looking at the numbers, but flexibility is clearly not its thing. It gets to 150 kilometers per hour and can stay there easily, but forget any real accelerations. Fine, it's a mid-sized bike, okay. What's cool is that it doesn't feel much slower than Africa Twin 1100. And I wonder why. Maybe simply because Africa has only 10 horsepower more and also even up to 40 kilograms more in the adventure sports with DCT variant, so basically 20% more weight but only 10% more power. Well, with the rider it gets somewhat equal. I wouldn't be surprised to see them accelerating equally at lower speeds. Later Africa Twin is quicker as it's got significantly more torque because 30 Newton meters more, so close to 50% more. That matters. But down low, man, they feel very much alike. And for the Transalp, that's great. Not so great for the Africa Twin, and once I make my comparison of these two, you should expect some surprising statements that I would not expect myself otherwise to be willing to express, but that's for later. So yes, performance is not the strongest point, and there are motorcycles that can excite in this segment. It's not exactly one of them in this area. But there are also others that are on the similar level, but you've got to pay more for them. Keep that in mind. What is important in this scenario of having to keep high RPM is the transmission, which is brilliant here. The travel of the lever is fairly long and works with clear clicks. This bike also has an optional quick shifter which works flawlessly. They are not always perfect, but this one to me is. The long travel of the lever also means, keep that in mind, that the cut-off power is also not the shortest, but at least it works 100% reliably, unlike in some other competitors. It's a great point for Honda here. Thank you for proving that it's possible. So here you've got good help in navigating through the RPM from the bike. And be warned that there is not much going on after 8,000 RPM, which is also the first time in the segment that I'm noticing such diesel engine-like behavior, as if the turbocharger would cut out at 8,000 RPM and it would leave you with no support after that. Something very similar happens here, and I would feel that it's all working better and the bike accelerates quicker if I just switch to the next gear at around 8,000 RPM and not pull it further. Just with an exception of the first gear or maybe the second, where otherwise, especially the first one, feels too short if you do that. So obviously a better solution is to pull it further. Somehow after 8,000 RPM the bike has a seizure, so it's better to keep it below. Honda went super old school, and instead of making it a petrol hybrid or electric, they've made it with a turbo diesel. I'm kidding, of course, but that's how it feels. So this expectation of awesome performance is not exactly fulfilled here, but don't get me wrong, it does feel adequate. I would be happier on it if I had more, but now understanding the idea of this bike and considering some other facts about it, I feel it's all fine, and I've got a warm feeling towards the bike if I need to state it clearly and directly at this point. And you will see it right now as the next super duper important area to screen is handling. I've got one thing to say here. It is among the best. At low speeds, it feels light and eager to turn. At higher speeds, it feels totally fine. And damn, it does feel better than many others within this segment, despite even the large 21-inch front rim. The rear rim is also unusually large, as it's an 18-inch rim, not just a 17-inch one, like for example in a V-Strom 800D. A side note, the tires here in the Transalp are tubed, so you will need to keep that in mind when changing them. You cannot just use any tires, but you need tubed ones. I feel it's not the best solution, but apparently it's cheaper to use spoked rims when they are not fully sealed, and this is what you're getting here. Not a big deal, as the tires seem great to me. So I would just stick to these particular ones and problem is solved. They are Metzeler Karoo street tires, by the way. So yes, this Transalp is amazingly neutral when cornering, regardless of an angle that you're at. And if you use a brake or accelerate in the corner, it stays the way you want it. Nothing happens, stays perfectly neutral. It's amazing. I love that. It's maybe not as easy to start turning as the all-time master in this, so BMW R1250 GS, but nothing in the mid-segment is perfect. Until, watch it, you ride a Moto Guzzi V85 TT, which we shouldn't forget about here. That one's maybe a little bit better, but Transalp is freaking great here. There's really nothing to complain here, and also it applies to one other set of circumstances when there are only great words to be said, and it's when riding over bumps and potholes in the corners. This keeps me astonished till now, actually, as usually you would expect the bike to lose some of its balance and just wave around when in a corner riding over some crap. But here, nothing like that happens. It just goes like a train over an iPhone placed on the tracks by some teens for TikTok purposes. Nothing happens, and Transalp just keeps going exactly as if nothing would be happening. I'm not the first to praise any a tiny thing done right in a motorcycle, but this deserves a big award for Honda. If they take this Transalp and put there an engine from an Africa Twin, it could be my bike, as I would just like to have some more punch. So why not to make Africa Twin just by taking exactly what I said? Just take the Transalp and give it a bigger engine. Good idea? Probably not that bad. All right, before I become a sweet donut on a chocolate bar from throwing all those compliments, there is just one area that could be improved here. Its behavior at very low, so at crawling speeds. Transalp is still feeling very light then, but it's not that super precise. That front suspension is very soft in the beginning, it's kind of long and so on. And also the position on the bike sagging in the rear and with a fairly tall handlebar makes it harder to precisely maneuver, for example, between cars that are already stopped in a traffic jam, so really at low speeds. This I am not entirely super crazy happy with here. One thing that could help would be a taller seat that would make me sit in a more aggressive position with a handlebar being relatively then lower for me, so that I get better control. It's still not bad, but this is the only one area where the new Transalp doesn't get so many compliments in the handling category from me. I would experiment with the seat, I would experiment with the handlebar, which feels a little bit also too close to me. I would definitely give it a shot, as then it would be, well, 100% awesome in terms of handling in every possible scenario. All right, now for city riding, just get rid of those stupid crazy wide handguards that stick out to the side so much that you need 2 empty lanes to pass between any vehicles. This is a shame, as it's sitting in my head, and also they are really being there very far to the sides completely unnecessarily. It would prevent me, when I was riding it, from trying to filter traffic, and I would prefer not to have them at all. And in fact, I would buy some aftermarket ones that are narrower. By the way, those handguards that you see are a paid option. They are a part of a pack in the case of this particular bike, a additionally paid pack, an option. So save your money and get other ones somewhere else, I suggest. And since I'm here temporarily pointing out some little issues, let me tell you that there is no cruise control, there is no cornering light, despite it already being LED. There are no heated seats option, there's no keyless ignition or fuel cap option, and of course, well, there is no electrically adjustable suspension. What is truly a pity is that ABS is not cornering, while I perceive it as, buying a sports car, let's say a Ferrari, and installing small steel rims on it. You're so close. So why proceed with strange savings? Just like the windshield, just give it that bloody easy adjustment system. Come on. Now, you may switch ABS off in the rear completely. Front and rear suspension have only preload adjustment, which is manual. So here are some, let's say, real savings if you care, and you may actually not care. So the suspension has 2 phases, just like the one on the larger Africa Twin 1100. Just there, it can be electrically adjustable, unlike here. The first phase shows itself when you ride on smoother roads, only with some changes in elevation or shape, not being entirely flat. Then it feels nice, it feels fairly smooth and a bit soft and a little bit floaty, but in a way that is nice and comfortable. It's not jumpy, so it's not too quickly reacting to those gentle changes in road shape. But then if you ride over a smaller or larger bump, it hits your back rather hard. And this is not what I exactly expected from 20 centimeters of front wheel travel and 19 centimeters of rear wheel travel, which is still a decent result, you'd think. Apparently only on paper, as the ride over bumps and potholes is far from the best, and this likely would be the weakest spot of the bike for me. if you can live with it, which, well, it is manageable to live with and it's still not as harsh or stiff as in regular non-adventure motorcycles, if you can accept that, the rest will be just awesome as a whole package. If suspension comfort is super important to you, if that's your priority, Transalp may not be your first choice. To me, it is important and I love it. I love it being comfy, but I think I would swallow it in the name of some other advantages, of which I still haven't mentioned the biggest one. Ha! That's coming in a moment. Then there's one last thing about the suspension, and it's that somehow if you ride on a road that is consisting fully of bumps and potholes, so let's say some off-road scenario or something as uneven as this road that you see me on, the bike seems to suddenly become composed fully and just float over it all. Single bumps on an otherwise smooth road hurt it and they make it confused, but just bumps, they make it somehow happy and walking with its head high and with you on top, not being shaken too much, but just being above all that mess, which is nice. Now, how this happens, why this happens, I think will have to stay an unsolved mystery, but it seems like a good bike for some flat but harsh gravel roads. Ground clearance is 21 centimeters, so it's also pretty good, just as are the brakes. Also, much better than in Africa Twin, I think. They can bite hard, while the front one needs a bit of a squeeze, but then it does the job and it's fairly easy to dose. But the rear one, man, I don't know what is going on here. I seriously don't know what Honda could have done that suddenly they gave us a rear brake that's possibly the best rear brake in all the adventure segment, including big adventure bikes too. I think that it may work even better than BMW R1250 GS's rear brake, which is great because the bike doesn't dive thanks to its front telelever suspension. Braking with a front brake, the rear tire stays down, it's got a lot of grip and it can do something. But here in the Transalp, where there's conventional front suspension, that front end dives way more than anyone would like it, by the way, and it's feeling like you're going to flip over or something is going to snap at some point. But the rear brake is incredible and this is a shock to me. It also means that all other manufacturers having bikes in this segment should learn. And now a sudden twist. Yeah, cool, awesome, fantastic. The brake is awesome, lovely, but I would use it only to test what it's like. Where's the sense in that? There is no sense. But there is a valid reason, which is that the brake lever is located so high that with a given knee angle and foot angle on a Transalp, for me, it is impossible to comfortably use it while riding normally. I cannot twist my foot so much upwards. Either the foot pegs are too low, which they don't seem like they are to me, or the lever is just way too high in comparison. One way of exiting this situation is getting yourself a third leg just to operate the lever, the brake lever, or you may be installing rubber padding back on those foot pegs. This could help, I think, as it would raise my legs on the foot pegs and so I would get some access to that brake lever. Here they are removed for some reason. Otherwise, in an emergency, it's not exactly natural to lift the whole leg off the foot peg and push the brake, so it's kind of missing the point this way. The same with the gear lever, which requires me to lift my whole leg up in order to downshift, which is not the most comfy thing. Strange, but I believe it is to satisfy that 0.5% of riders that ride off the road for 1% of the time. Great choice, Honda. This is a bummer here a little bit. But just look at this bike in this white color. It looks really nice to me. It is a matter of taste, obviously, but that's for sure my flavor looking at this bike from the side. Now from the front, I do not really like that front light that is copied from another Honda, and it's like a Hulk Hogan character with a beautiful face of Jennifer Lopez. It just doesn't work very well together. Car drivers weren't also very much aware of this light, so it may be too small a little bit to be respected on the road. Anyhow, I could live with that design regardless. Just look at the V-Strom 800D. You guys be the judges here. I like this color scheme, especially that two others are currently gray and black. So the two most exciting colors for a nice, new, pretty cool motorcycle. If you take a look at the display, you will realize that it looks fine and modern. The information on it is clear and understandable. Don't be bothered with the size, come on. There are 4 ways of displaying the stuff on it and some are really nice. Other manufacturers should follow this example. And oh, definitely Triumph with their Tiger 900, well, they would call this heresy. Them with their science fiction and alien and predator having baby called Tiger 900. Yeah. Here in the Transalp, switches on the left handlebar are somewhat unconventional, as this tall one can be moved left and right as a whole, but you can also push it separately on top. I mean, it's a whole button, but you can push the top of it, and you can push the button to move up and down in the menu. Holding this switch to the right from the main screen makes a menu and a hidden menu pop up, and then you can navigate through it. It requires some waiting for it to appear, and generally it's not the most intuitive thing to navigate through, but only I think because of this switch working the way it works. The separate function button operates some additional options like heated grips or some additional auxiliary lights, while the mode button works as it should, and it just quickly changes modes, riding modes, if you want to upset yourself by switching to the standard mode from the sport. But I get it, sometimes it's good to get hungry, as then later any food tastes better. Nothing can make me hungry enough to like those mirrors that now seem to be appearing on all motorcycles, with the edges cut exactly where other vehicles would be appearing behind you, so in the outside lower corner of the mirrors, and you may observe the stars in the sky or tops of the skyscrapers in the city, but you won't be able to see a crazy pizza delivery guy trying to overtake you on the right next to the curb. These things I would throw away, and I would get some normal square mirrors, as it just kept bothering me. There is also some vibration caused by the engine, especially coming through those foot pegs, but it's not terrible. I think with the rubber it should be better. So far they were noticeable. Heat management is fine, I think. The bike would get warm, but it would not reach the level where I would pay actually any significant attention to it. The weather was hot and the bike dealt with it totally fine, even in some city traffic, waiting at the traffic lights. And man, that sound! Again, Honda does it better than anyone else in the segment, as you just want to rev the bike at a standstill, and it just sounds like a 1-liter bike should sound today, but none of them actually do. And this is not a 1-liter bike, well, except for a Honda Africa 1100. So this duo does the job already with their stock exhaust, which is very unusual. Really deep and enjoyable sound here. Not the nicest at the higher RPM, it's an inline engine, it's quite stressful at the highest RPM, stressful sounding, but then in those circumstances you usually care about some other stuff. At low RPM, this thing sounds great and will greet you nicely every time you start the engine. I love that. Then for this Transalp you can get heated grips, a center stand, crash bars that you see here, and some other small things like a quick shifter, which is a paid option, and definitely an engine guard. I think it looks better. So to sum up, we've got, I think, a super capable motorcycle here from Honda. It will do well in the city as it gives you a lot of steering control. Just get some other handguards if you want any. It's getting way too wide because of them. It will do well outside the city when just riding around for fun. It will handle a highway if you just need to get somewhere. It won't be super crazy. And it will be fine on some gravel road next to your summer house in the countryside. This is exactly a bike that I would call a do-it-all. And do-it-all pretty well, by the way. It may not have the most comfortable suspension, but it handles great at all speeds, except for those crawling speeds, which is a fairly small thing. The position and seat are really nice. It may not have the most exciting engine, and so this is my conclusion right here. The value that Honda brought to the segment and the entire class of adventure motorcycles is, in my opinion, unbeatable. This is and I wanted to say the cheapest, but it doesn't sound well, so I will say this is a bike that you will have to spend the least amount of money on when buying new inside the segment. The next competitor where I live is more than 10% more, while it's not giving you anything that would be really better in any single area. All this convinces me that Honda absolutely wins in terms of value, and there are no downsides of riding this new Transalp. I feel that it can suit so many riders, and in the end, I feel that it's a really smart choice, a smart purchase today when buying new. I support this model a lot and appreciate Honda showing that without some ridiculous prices, we may get not just some bike, but one that is great, is enjoyable in many areas, and it's one of the best actually. It easily gets an 8 out of 10 from me on a VTOL's recommendation board considering its value for money. Bottom line, everyone who will buy this new XL750 Transalp, or just who will buy this Transalp, has my blessing. All the best, and subscribe for upcoming honest reviews and head-to-head comparisons of these bikes.